Great mixers know how to make little tweaks and get big results. It can be really tempting to go crazy with a bunch of compression, reverb, EQ, and other processing to try to make a mix sound bigger. But a lot of times it just ends up sounding overprocessed and plasticky. So today I want to take you through a mix I'm working on and show you how just a few little tweaks can make all the difference. I'm going to explain everything I'm doing in detail and exactly why I'm doing it. And by the end of this video, you're going to hear how each of these little tweaks is going to add up to make a big difference in this mix. Let's get started. Take a listen to this mix as it is right now. And we're going to talk about some of the problems.
There's no reason to stop. 12 got a feeling like she's in a muscle. Our people feel like it's no reason for cop. They killing us, gets us a reason for Glocks. Semi-automatic, static, sat amongst the demons and plotted for green and receiving the cheese. Planting the seed for money trees. They try to take it, I bet I leave blood on the leaves. She on her knees. Is it
So I'm going to make a copy of this mix. That way we can compare it after we do all of our tweaks. So let's analyze this mix as it is right now. The first thing I notice is the drums sound pretty weak. I'm going to show you some ways that we can liven them up, get them to hit a lot harder. Another thing I hear is everything just sounds very flat in 2D. It's like the vocal is up here and the rest of the beat is way back here. It needs to feel more like the vocal is up front and everything is kind of wrapped around it. So I'm going to show you some techniques for achieving that. See if you can hear what I mean by that. Just listen to the way the vocal and the beat sound kind of separated and the drums are just pretty weak.
reason to stop? 12 got a feeling like she's in a muscle. Our people feel like it's no reason for cop. They killing us, gets us a reason for Glocks. Semi-automatic, static, sat amongst the demons and plotted for green and receiving the cheese.
Now before we get started fixing the drums, you're going to notice the vocals are already pretty decently mixed. You can see we've done some mixing on them with Xvox. Take a listen to what this is doing.
Reason to stop. 12 got a feeling like she's in a muscle. Our people feel like it's no reason for cop. They killing us, gets us a reason for Glocks.
So we're getting that nice upfront compression, super smooth de-essing, some nice forward tone. And so I'm liking where those are sitting, but we don't currently have any processing on any parts of the rest of the track. So what we're going to do is focus on the rest of the track and how we can get it to wrap around those vocals. And the first thing I like to do is get the drums hitting a bit harder because these drums are really the foundation of everything in the track. So I'll start by loading X-Rack Pro on the kick track. And I'm going to show you some specific tools in X-Rack Pro that are great for drums. So the first thing we'll look at is the transient. Now this kick isn't cutting through the mix. Listen to it in solo so you can hear what it sounds like. And now listen to it in the mix.
Reason to stop. 12 got a feeling like she's in a muscle. Our people feel like it's no reason for cop. They killing us, gets us a...
So it should be hitting a lot harder, and that's what this transient's going to let us do. See, the transient control separates the attack from the sustain of the sound. So we can actually boost the attack and give it more punch. So you see how much punchier that sounds when we push that transient.
Reason to stop. 12 got a feeling like she's in a muscle. Our people feel like it's no reason for cop. They killing us, gets us a reason for Glocks. Semi-automatic, static, sat amongst...
So one thing I like to remind myself as I'm going through a mix like this, especially if I find myself boosting things like crazy or doing a lot of processing, I like to ask myself, how little could I use and still be getting the effect that I want? And a lot of times that's the right amount to use. Just because it sounds really cool when you're cranking it up doesn't mean you have to use that amount in order to get the effect you want. A lot of times it's more tasteful to kind of dial it back. So I'm just going to dial this back.
Reason to stop. 12 got a feeling like she's in a muscle. Our people feel like it's no reason for cop. They killing us, gets us a reason for Glocks. Semi-automatic, static, sat amongst the demons and plotted for green and receiving the cheese. Planting the seed for money trees. They try to take it, I bet I leave.
So I'm definitely getting the kick to cut through a little bit more, somewhere around this 30 or 40% range. Now I'm going to show you one of my all-time favorite tricks to use with X-Rack Pro on drums. And it has to do with this clipper. If we set this clipper to hard, and then we use this trim knob to drive into it, we're going to get this really punchy sound, but it's not going to overload the mix bus because we're clipping it with X-Rack Pro. Take a listen. So you can see we're getting a ton of perceived level out of it, and it sounds really hard and punchy, but we're not actually clipping anything. That's because we have this hard clipper on, which allows us to get a more analog style clipping, and it sounds much fatter on the transient as a result. So let's take a listen to this in the context of the mix.
Reason to stop. 12 got a feeling like she's in a muscle. Our people feel like it's no reason for cop. They killing us, gets us a reason for Glocks. Semi-automatic, static, sat amongst the demons and plotted for green and receiving the cheese. Planting the seed for money trees. They try to take it, I bet I leave blood on the leaves. She on her knees. Is it the cheddar? I know I'm that nigga, no better, like ever than bread. I bet I get a leg up on competition like a shit who went wet in the ground, the kitchen get.
So you can see how just a couple of tiny tweaks, just a little bit of transient and a little bit driving into this hard clipper on X-Rack Pro, and all of a sudden this kick is cutting through the mix and it just sounds really fat and punchy. That's all I'm gonna do on the kick for now. Let's copy this X-Rack Pro down to the snare and see if we can get this as punchy as the kick now.
Bet I leave blood on the leaves, she on the knees. Is it the cheddar? I know I'm that nigga, no better, like ever than bread. I bet I get a leg up on competition like a shit who went wet in the ground, the kitchen.
You can hear how much punch this brings to the snare drum. Now the kick and snare are cutting through the mix, but we could probably dial back the snare a little bit.
Bet I leave blood on the leaves, she on the knees. Is it the cheddar? I know I'm that nigga, no better, like ever than bread. I bet I get a leg up on competition like a shit who went wet in the ground, the kitchen. Getting busy like nympho, standing 10 toes to the ground and I've been gold. Come around here and see a bet I leave blood on the leaves, she on the knees. Is it the cheddar? I know I'm that nigga, no better, like ever than bread. I bet I get a leg up on competition like a shit who went wet in the ground.
So now that snare is cutting through in a nice way, again, we just dialed back what we were doing. But now the track is feeling a little bit empty. And it has to do with this 808. So I'm loaded up X-Rack Pro on the 808 track. Take a listen to the 808 by itself. So let me show you something I'm doing a lot lately with 808s to give them a lot more size without getting out of control. I'm gonna flip over to this satin compressor in X-Rack Pro and just take a listen to what this thing does on an 808. You can just hear how much fuller and fatter this 808 sounds. And typically when you add a bunch of compression to an 808, it sounds really clicky. It kind of makes it sound smaller, kind of choked almost. But with this specific compressor, this satin compressor, it just fills out in such an amazing way and it sounds so smooth. Now, one really important thing when you do this, you got to make sure you have a lot of headroom on your input. If your 808 is slamming way up on your input meters, it's not going to work well no matter what you do. So you want to make sure you're hitting right around -12 dBFS, which is right where the color changes on the meter. You can see that up here it's kind of changing more to a yellow. So we want to make sure you have plenty of headroom here if you're going to do any type of compression or dynamic control on an 808. Let's take a listen to this in the mix.
Reason to stop, 12 got a feeling like trees in a muscle. Our people feel like it's no reason for cop. They killing us, gets us a reason for Glocks. Semi-automatic, static, sat amongst the demons and plotted for green and receiving the cheese. Planting the.
It just sounds so much more solid and full in the low end. And we didn't even touch the EQ. It's important to stop and listen after you do any type of processing to hear what the effect is on the tone, what the effect is on the dynamics. Because especially if you're using a tool like X-Rack Pro, this thing is infusing so much color at every step of the way, just like analog compressors or analog EQs would do as well. So it's important to take a holistic view. Now, there is one more trick I like to use, especially on 808s, and that is this massive mode in the maximize module. Take a listen to this.
Reason to stop, 12 got a feeling like trees in a muscle. Our people feel like it's no reason for cop. They killing us, gets us a reason for Glocks. Semi-automatic, static, sat amongst the demons and plotted for green and receiving it.
If you're listening on good speakers or a system with a sub especially, you're going to hear how just insanely massive this sub gets, but it's still completely in control. It's not overloading the mix bus and it's not starting to distort or crunch. And that's just the magic of this massive mode. Now I'm going to dial it back just to be tasteful.
Reason to stop, 12 got a feeling like trees in a muscle. Our people feel like it's no reason for cop. They killing us, gets us a reason for Glocks. Semi-automatic, static, sat amongst the demons and plotted for green and receiving the cheese. Planting the seed for money trees, they try to take it. I bet I leave blood on the leaves, she on the knees.
So it's almost like the 808 disappears when we bypass X-Rack Pro now. That's just how pronounced it is because of this little processing we're doing. Now I would like to level match a little bit more here, so let's dial this back on the output.
Reason to stop, 12 got a feeling like trees in a muscle. Our people feel like it's no reason for cop. They killing us, gets us a reason for Glocks. Semi-automatic, static, sat amongst the demons and plotted for green and receiving the cheese. Planting the seed for money trees, they try to take it. I bet I leave blood on the leaves, she on the knees.
So you can hear after we level match it, it still sounds so much more solid and full. And that's because we're dynamically controlling it. Before we did this processing, those peaks were really loud, but the 808 was kind of dying out pretty quickly, which made it sound a little too empty for this track. So this is just smoothing it out and helping it fill out the rest of the mix. So we've only done a few tweaks. We've used X-Rack Pro on the kick, the snare, and the 808. And already we're getting a much bigger sound. But there's something missing from this track. One of the things I always look for in a mix like this is where is that element that's going to grab your ear as a listener? Where's the ear candy, and how can we make sure that that's cutting through enough? Because right now we've got nice punchy drums, we got a big full low end, but it doesn't have that element that's just jumping out and kind of wrapping around the vocals and pulling at your ear.
Stop. 12 got a feeling like she's in a muscle. Our people feel like it's no reason for cop. They killing us, gets us a reason for Glocks. Semi-automatic, static, set.
So as I'm listening through this session, there's this choir sample track. Take a listen to this. It's such a cool sound, but it's not getting enough love in the mix. It needs to be brought out a little bit more. And so that's where this next trick comes in. I'm gonna load X-Rack Max, and I'm just gonna dial in a little bit of OTT with the multiband dynamics here. So you can hear as we push this multi-slider up, this sound just completely opens up. We get so much dimension. It sounds like we can hear every single detail in the sound. And that's one of the amazing things that OTT can do. Let's listen to it in the mix.
Reason to stop. 12 got a feeling like she's in a muscle. Our people feel like it's no reason for cop. They killing us, gets us a reason for Glocks. Semi-automatic, static, sat amongst the demons and plotted for green and receiving the cheese. Planting the seed for money trees. They try to take it. I bet I leave blood on the leaves. She on her knees.
So again, we can dial it back until it's tasteful. We can level match a little bit more.
Reason to stop. 12 got a feeling like she's in a muscle. Our people feel like it's no reason for cop. They killing us, gets us a reason for Glocks. Semi-automatic, static, sat amongst the demons and plotted for green and receiving the cheese. Planting the seed for money trees. They try to take it. I bet I leave blood on the leaves.
Now, one of the things we have to be really careful with OTT is bringing up any noise or anything unwanted, especially in the low end. And so that's why X-Rack Max is a great choice, because you can actually lower the amount on each individual band. So normally with OTT, you can only adjust the overall amount, but with X-Rack Max, you can pull down the lows, mids, or highs by however much you want. So I'm going to dial back the lows to 0%. It's not applying any OTT effect here, just to the mids and highs. But it's doing exactly what we need it to. That's where we're getting the bite for this track. So it's working just where it needs to now.
Reason to stop. 12 got a feeling like she's in a muscle. Our people feel like it's no reason for cop. They killing us, gets us a reason for Glocks. Semi-automatic, static, sat amongst the demons and plotted for green and receiving the cheese. Planting the seed for money trees. They try to take it. I bet I leave blood on the leaves. She on her knees.
I love how that sounds. You can tell we're completely opening up this mix. It's starting to sound really 3D. We're getting drums leaping out. We're getting this sound kind of wrapping around. Now there's two more things I'll do almost every time on a mix like this. And the first is adding a little bit of polish to the vocals overall. So to do that, I've got an all vocal group. I've loaded Xvox Pro on that. Now, Xvox is processing each of these individual tracks, but this is just meant to give us a little bit of lift overall on the vocals.
Green and receiving the cheese, planting the seed for money trees. They try to take it. I bet I leave blood on the leaves. She on her knees. Is it the cheddar? I know I'm that nigga. No better like ever than bread. I bet I get a leg up on competition like a shit who went wet in the ground, the kitchen, getting busy like nympho. Standing 10 toes to the ground and I've been gold. Come around and see I hold it down. Been a king, hold the crown. Yeah, I been there. Been a boy, her muscle can't fold. Got a sister so you don't know the struggle, bitch. I been black.
So you can see we're doing just a tiny bit of tone shaping here with a little bit of Air Plus, a little bit of high end, and then a little bit of smoothing with the de-esser and a little bit of compression with this Vox Bus compressor. We're just doing tiny little tweaks, but it is elevating this vocal up and just helping it sit now in this new beat mix. The other thing I'll do is a little bit of MIXBUS processing. So I've got X-Rack Pro loaded up on the entire mix, and let's just see how we can open this up.
Green and receiving the cheese, planting the seed for money trees. They try to take it. I bet I leave blood on the leaves. She on her knees. Is it the cheddar? I know I'm that nigga. No better like ever than bread. I bet I get a leg up on competition like a shit who went wet in the ground, the kitchen, getting busy like nympho. Standing 10 toes to the ground and I've been gold. Come around and see I hold it down. Been a king, hold the crown. Yeah, I been there. Been a boy, her muscle can't can't go, gotta.
So this is just adding a really subtle fattening to the transients. I love how this A strip sounds, especially with the warmth pulled down just a little bit. It sounds fat and punchy in the lows, and overall just helps glue this mix together. I'm also going to look at a little bit of glue compression, and I might even use a little bit of this massive mode.
Green and receiving the cheese, planting the seed for money trees. They try to take it, I bet I leave blood on the leaves. She on the knees. Is it the cheddar? I know I'm that nigga, no better. Like Evident bread, I bet I get a leg up on competition. Like a shit who went wet in the ground, the kitchen. Getting busy like nympho, standing 10 toes to the ground and I've been gold.
So again, very subtle tweaks here, just doing a little bit of glue compression, a little bit of this massive multiband dynamics, and all of a sudden this mix has come together in a really nice way. So now that we've gone through the entire mix, and we've made all these little tweaks, none of them were insanely crazy by themselves. But now that we're gonna stack them up all together, and we're gonna go back and listen to where we started and where we ended up, and take a listen to the difference.
Reason to stop, 12 got a feeling like trees in a muscle. Our people feel like it's no reason for cop. They killing us, gets us a reason for glocks. Semi-automatic, static, sat amongst the demons and plotted for green and receiving the cheese. Planting the seed for money trees, they try to take it, I bet I leave blood on the leaves. She on the knees. Is it the cheddar? I know I'm that nigga, no better. Like Evident bread, I bet I get a leg.
It's insane how each of those little tweaks added up to make such a massive difference to the overall mix. All we did was made the kick and snare hit a little bit harder with just a little bit of transient control and a little bit of clipping. Then we filled out the low end with the 808 by giving it that nice smooth compression and a little bit of that massive multiband dynamics trick. Then we figured out which track in the mix needed to kind of jump out and give us that ear candy and that dimension. We found it with the choir track and just helped elevate that with a little bit of OTT. And finally, just a touch of bus processing on the overall vocals to elevate them slightly, and the overall mix bus to give it a little bit more glue and polish. And the other thing I want to point out is we did all of this with almost no EQ. This is all happening with the tone and color coming from the processors in X-Rack Pro. So take one more listen before and after.
Reason to stop, 12 got a feeling like trees in a muscle. Our people feel like it's no reason for cop. They killing us, gets us a reason for glocks. Semi-automatic, static, sat amongst the demons and plotted for green and receiving the cheese. Planting the seed for money trees, they try to take it, I bet I leave blood on the leaves. She on the knees. Is it the cheddar? I know I'm that nigga, no better. Like Evident bread, I bet I get a leg up on competition. Like a shit who went wet in the ground, the kitchen.
So keep this in mind next time you're working on a mix. Not every track needs to be processed so much that it completely changes the sound of the mix. You can see just a few tweaks on the right elements and all of a sudden the mix opens up completely. If you learned something from this video, give it a like, subscribe for more tutorials like this, and as always, happy mixing.